Hello everybody and welcome back to our Victoria 2 Dev Diary series on Dev Diary 4, if I can find the title. In fact, I don't even know if I can see the title. Anyways, Dev Diary 4 Goods, where basically the dev team for Victoria 3 is, or did I say Victoria 2 earlier? I meant Victoria 3. But anyways, the Victoria 3 new Dev Diary edition here that released just this morning. There's a few things here. So basically, well, it's pretty much a picture Dev Diary. There's not a whole lot of information interlaced throughout the entire Dev Diary, unfortunately, but a lot of the stuff here seems pretty much almost exactly the same as Victoria 2, with the addition of some other trade goods. But regardless, the same principle, the same sort of structure, programming seems almost exactly the same. And also, another cool thing I did learn, despite my, 8 plus years, 1,500 hours of playing Victoria 2, I was always a little bit confused on what this E meant, and I just barely found out this morning that it meant pound, a pound symbol for like the UK or Britain, and that was a big, pretty much a dumb moment for me. But basically, yeah, it took me that long. But it does make sense because the game is literally called Victoria 2, which is based off of Queen Victoria, which of course was one of the queens of Britain. And so it does make sense why in the game money would be represented by a pound symbol instead of anything else. So that's a little bit interesting too. A little interesting tidbit for me to find out whether you guys knew that or not. Maybe I'm the only one that was, ignorant of that aspect. But anyways, here we have is a picture of their work in progress, sort of production menu, what I'm assuming. Because as you can see over, I'm going to put it on the screen right here, in Victoria 2, the production menu is a little bit different. Well, kind of interlaced. I actually like the Victoria 2 way that they laid it out, because this one looks a little bit just cluttered and kind of unorganized. Well, the Victoria 2 menu, of course, was divided into military goods, raw material goods, industrial goods, consumer goods, and you could have a very easy glance at pretty much everything. While here, it seems like it's all just kind of, you have to scroll down to see more, which I guess it does make sense because it seems like Victoria 3, instead of following Victoria 2's sort of legacy of having these menus pop up in the middle of the screen, it looks like it's going to go ahead and follow more like what EU4 had, for example, where you have a lot of the information showing up on the left side of the screen. And so I guess this might be a little bit of a way for them to try and fit everything onto the left side of the screen. But I guess you can kind of see a sort of, let's say, graphical differentiation between Victoria 2 and Victoria 3. Victoria 3 almost seems like it's a little Hearts of Iron 4-esque. I do prefer Victoria 2 just aesthetic going on here. I like a little bit more Victorian vibe going on there, though I would appreciate more of a graphical update of what Victoria 2 had instead of what Victoria 3 seems to be aiming for. And so that's my own personal opinion on that front. But back to the Dev Diary. And so you have goods. It doesn't say right here, but I'm assuming that right here it's saying how much you are producing and how much you are using, how much you need in your economy. And so over here looks to be about the amount of income you're making per resource. And this isn't something that Victoria 2 had per se. Like this, you would have to go into each resource to find out how much money you are making. But it looks like there might be a little bit of a more generalized menu where you can actually look over your entire economy and find out what is each good producing. This looks like to be the sell price for each good. Of course, the gold seems to represent a more valuable, higher. Actually, no, that doesn't make any sense. Because you do have silver right here and gold right here. Maybe it's more of a luxury resource, perhaps. I'm not sure what the gold represents. So maybe there's gonna be some more edits there to give us a little bit more information on what that means. But of course, you can look at all these different goods. You can see exactly what they mean, mostly by the pictures. So you have like linen, for example, wood, fish, bells. I have no idea what that is. Coal, meat, paper, probably regular clothes. This could also be, I'm pretty sure it's regular clothes, not luxury clothes like Victoria 2 had. This, I'm not entirely sure, some type of berry, fruit, maybe it's tobacco, not sure. Fruit right here, tools. Is that a donut? Cheese? a drink. Looks like something you would get at like some sort of fast food restaurant. Well, maybe not cheese, but like maybe like a Victorian era fast food restaurant, right? But anyways, you have your staple goods. So obviously it goes ahead and follows a similar format to what Victoria 2 followed. So staple goods probably represents more like raw material. Well, maybe not raw material goods. Consumer goods, perhaps. Or maybe it's just a completely new variation of the staple goods, luxury goods. So maybe it divides Victoria 2's menu a little bit further. So you have industrial goods, which was in Victoria 2. You have military goods, which is also in Victoria 2. And so then you have staple and luxury. So before we had consumer goods and we had raw material goods. So it looks like that might be a little bit of differentiation there. Though it says 4 broad categories, which I'm assuming is exactly what I was referring to. Like Victoria 2 had their 4 broad categories, which was military goods, raw material goods, industrial goods, and consumer goods. So there's some differences here. And as far as this goes, of course, a lot of these goods are mainly consumed by either the pups or the buildings. And so in this case, the buildings are going to refer to more industrial, their factories, you know. Pops will be more like what they need. Like, for example, in Victoria 2, you had pops who had their everyday needs, they had their life needs, they had their luxury needs, and you would have to sort of produce enough goods at a low enough price for each pop to be able to afford their life, everyday, and luxury needs, which kind of influences how happy the pop is. And so, of course, a lot of the staple goods were life needs. Like you had grain, you had fish, you had fruit. Those are all life needs of the people. They have everyday needs, like maybe like clothes or furniture, maybe alcohol. And then, of course, luxury needs like tea, cars, which you don't have to tell later game, paper. A lot for these, at least for the lower income pops in the game. And so it looks like that's going to be following basically about the similar avenue of approach here, Victoria 3, which I do appreciate. So then you have this other picture. I'm going to go ahead and open this image in a new tab so we have a better view of it. And let me zoom out super quick. And there we go. So can I zoom out a little bit more? Yeah, there we go. So anyways, we have grain in the British market. And so in Victoria 2, I'm going to do a little bit of a side-by-side here to show you exactly what Victoria 2 looks like as well, if I can. I probably can't do that, actually, now that I think about it. We'd have to... Yeah, it's not going to work. I could probably move this little image over to the right. But anyways, so in Victoria 3, grain, the British market, I'm assuming this is, 26th of May, 1836 is where they're at right now. So this is very shortly after the start of the game. And so, of course, the one I'm looking at, I'm going to pull up on the menu here, is going to be much later, 1917-ish in the game. And, of course, you have a market price, and it seems like it goes under a variation of time. I'm not sure if there's going to be a specific time frame here. In Victoria 2, it was a 36-month time frame that we had when we were going to, if we had to look at the general price differentiation, which at least in the Victoria 2 image over here, you'll see it doesn't change much. It looks like it's between 1.2 and 3.2, so it's 2.2 pounds per price of grain. Here, it's a lot more. It's 17.1, so perhaps in the start of the game, grain is a little more expensive. But as the game goes on, of course, your RGO output efficiency goes up. Produce more grain, it goes cheaper, it drops in price. The whole supply and demand aspect that Victoria 2 is definitely intrinsically applying into its systems of economy. And so you have price differentiation is going to happen because of differing supplies and demands. And so, of course, what you're looking at is show potentials on map, production, consumption. I'm not entirely sure. All of these looks like it might be like a heat map that a lot of Paradox games uses. Victoria 2, for example, also used it. Hopefully, it's going to be a lot more detailed explanations on the map through different map modes that we can find out. But here in the bottom part, we have sold by and bought by. And so, of course, when it comes to grain in Victoria 2, you also have the same sort of thing. You had total produced, which I'm assuming is going to be sold by. And so here you have building production. You don't really see much details because grain isn't an industrial good. So I'm assuming you're not going to be seeing factories, for example, on here. Whereas, like for Victoria 2, for example, you see produced by RGOs. And so your RGO pops are producing all of your grain. This is 13.3 thousand. So of course, looks like the amount of grain being produced, or the numbers being produced, or between Victoria 2 and Victoria 3 is going to be different. And so you have a lot more grain on the market in Victoria 3, whereas Victoria 2 had it a little bit more downsized, maybe to help crunch numbers or something. I'm not sure why. But then you have bought by. So this is the amount of pops who are buying. So currently, there's a surplus in the market for grain. So of course, maybe that's going to be referencing why the price might be dropping. So in Victoria 2, for example, there's a surplus on the market. The price would slowly drop to meet the demand of the populace. And so of course, that might be represented here as well. Pop consumption, building consumption. And so you can see, for example, the grain ledger on, I'm not sure which side I'm going to put it on, but anyways, you have farmers, you have different pops of farmers, laborers, craftsmen, they're all using grain. But then on below those three, you have a liquor distillery. And so factories use grain as well, and so it's a pop. So here you have building consumption, so of course that's going to be our factories, more or less, though of course Victoria 3 appears to be adding more than just factories. Then you also have on the right side of Victoria 2 had a little bit more information than what we're seeing in Victoria 3. It showed what the product may be used for, but granted, I will be the first to admit that I'd never paid attention to that section. So maybe it's just to help lower the clunkiness. But you can see the total produced amount of grain, at least in Victoria 2, in this figure, this picture I'm showing, was 1.947, and the total used was 1.920K. And so, of course, there's going to be some differences on that end. And so that is that for the grain for the most part. You have porcelain, so of course this is going to be a luxury good, and so this isn't like your staple goods like you have over here. And so luxury goods are obviously going to be more profitable, but they are only going to be bought by people who are wealthier. As you can see, consumed by pops of wealth levels 15 to 29. So it looks like Victoria 3 is going to go a little bit more in depth on how a pop expands from lower class to upper class, and it might depend on your job, it might depend on how much money your pops are having in general. And it says 15 to 99, so maybe that's the upper percentage of society, so maybe the lower 50%, I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just a hard number for your pops. In Victoria 2, a lot of pops, their wealth was determined by what job they had. In Victoria 3, it looks like that could be a little bit more flexible. It might not be as solid, as restricted as it was in Victoria 2. But of course, you're going to have pops of a certain wealth who are going to be, consuming that. Just like Victoria 2, we have luxury furniture, luxury chairs, for example. You have luxury clothes. Similar thing. I don't think porcelain was actually an aspect there. In fact, if I'm looking right now, it wasn't. Porcelain wasn't in the game for Victoria 2, which, I mean, okay, that's fine. But regardless, we see that it's being produced by Glassworks. So Glassworks is going to be a new factory. So maybe, because we had a lot, like as far as Victoria 2, there were different factories. You had, for example, canned food factories, ammunition factories. Glassworks is perhaps maybe, because I know glass was produced in Victoria 2. This could be a little bit different. So maybe it chooses what a factory can produce. So maybe a factory can produce multiple types of goods. So maybe not just glass. Maybe it also produces porcelain, like in this case, with Glassworks. And so that could be a little bit interesting. In fact, yes, this is porcelain right here. So maybe that's like a general sort of category for each factory. So maybe you have, or no, it's produced by, so Glassworks and porcelain. Sorry, I'm like going back on myself here. But regardless, that's luxury goods. And you have industrial goods down here. And so that's, of course, iron, coal, rubber, lead. Lead is a new addition here. We didn't have lead in Victoria 2 either. And these are, of course, vital right here. It says vital goods. It's crucial to industrialization and growing the GDP of your country. And so Victoria 2, for example, you could make a ton of money solely on the industrialization of your nation. That's how you get a lot more income. I think, I'm not sure what, I don't have the map up here right now, but you can produce up to like 17,000 pounds, like maybe the 50% of your economy is being produced solely from industrial goods, from your tariffs that you're assigning onto these goods. And so there might be some differences there. And of course, market price is fluctuating in this case, and tools are being produced in the Swedish market. So this is the Swedish market, and the price is going up. And that is going to be because they're not producing enough. So there's only 70 being sold currently, while there's a demand of 111 of them. So demand outweighs your supply. And so of course the price is going to go up, which says slightly more expensive, which is kind of something that's predictable in this front. And so then of course we have military goods, ammunition. This is one I'm going to compare side by side as well. A little bit. So military goods, of course, they're going to be like small arms, ammunition. Warships is a new one. In Victoria 2, we have like steamer convoys or steamer ships. I'm not sure. I think it was steamer convoys, as well as clipper convoys. It looks like they're going straight for warships in this case, which does make sense because, of course, in Victoria 2, you were building, say, battleships, like these iron battleships, or these completely iron, like dreadnoughts or steel even. And you were still using steamer convoys to produce them, which, I mean, give or take, it might be a little bit interesting, or maybe that's not what the case was. Maybe I'm just kind of drawing wrong assumptions here. But regardless, it looks like warships is going to be a specific good, military good you're going to have in the game. So that's interesting. And of course, prices are going to fluctuate, of course, based on your demand. And so you're going to need to make sure that you can supply military goods for your army. In Victoria 2, for example, you're producing your troops, your soldiers, and if you didn't have enough canned food, if you didn't have enough artillery, you couldn't produce more troops because the amount of standing army you have in the field also requires your own maintenance. And so ammunition, for example, if you want to produce, you have a cap on basically on the amount of troops your country can support based off of how much ammunition you can provide to the armies. Of course, you can go over that if you have more armies and ammunition, but you're going to run out of goods, you're going to lose organization as a result, and it's obviously going to affect your armies in a very negative capacity. And so in this case, you can see that ammunitions can be used by barracks and naval bases, which are two new buildings being introduced in Victoria 3 that wasn't so much introduced in Victoria 2. Victoria 2 did have naval bases, but they were used to, of course, produce higher leveled ships. Barracks was not a thing in Victoria 2, so I'm kind of interested in seeing how that plays out in the game. And so, of course, if we're looking at the ammunition in Victoria 2, you can see that, of course, the country that I was playing as, the North American Union, part of my Super Nations mod in 1917, and the ammunition, of course, the NAU produced almost 43% of the world production. You don't see here how much production you're using, but I'm assuming that's because we're on the usage tab instead of the British market, so we can't see the full thing here. And maybe actually going back to the whole maybe used for, I can see where the usage, actually no, that's going to be the used by, never mind, scratch what I was just saying. But there's a lot of different, the goods can be used for a whole host of different things, and so I'm assuming it's going to follow a little bit in line with what Victoria 2 was like. And so I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I don't think there really is. Actually, in one final thought, I do know, because I'm going to pull up the Victoria 2 laborers menu super quick. And in this case, you see that each province, each pop in that province produces a certain trade good. In Victoria 3, the plan is that each province isn't going to have a specific RGO it produces anymore. In this case, it's only wood. It's going to have in Victoria 2. In Victoria 3, it's going to have multiple RGOs for even a single state, a single province. Whereas in Victoria 2, there's only that single good. Of course, there was different goods throughout the entire state, but they're only confined to a single province. And of course, you can still produce more industrial goods based off how many factories you have in a province, but only up to 8 was the limit. So I'm kind of curious what Victoria 3 is going to do as far as broaching the topic of how is there a hard cap on factories. I'm not sure, but I guess we'll find out. But in this case, there's really not much more else to discuss, at least on my end, as far as this whole Dev Diary for Goods. And so hopefully the information I presented sort of helps shed a little bit light on what the Dev Diary or the devs are planning for Victoria 3. So anyways, thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. As always, please leave a like down below and consider subscribing if you would like to see more content just like this, more frequent uploads. If you have any suggestions, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time.